No one noticed the human bleeding on the marble floor. That was the strange part. The Ethelgard Nexus was filled with the most powerful beings in known space, alien queens, warlords, trade gods, and machine minds older than stars. Music floated through the air like liquid glass. Light bent itself into polite colors. Security fields hummed softly, reassuring everyone that nothing bad could happen here. And yet, it did. Commander Elias Rowe of Earth was not supposed to matter tonight. Humans never did at gatherings like this. They were invited out of courtesy, not fear. Clever, yes. Persistent, maybe. But fragile. Soft. Temporary. Elias knew that. He stood still near the velvet barrier, dressed in formal Terran uniform that felt more like armor made of mistakes. Tight collar. Decorative insignia. Zero mobility. Humans called it looking respectable. Soldiers called it a liability. Across the hall stood Queen Celarin of the Aurelian Continuum. To the galaxy, she was legendary, an alien ruler whose decisions shifted star maps and ended wars before they began. Her species stood taller than humans, their bodies plated in living crystal that changed color with emotion. Tonight, her armor glowed a controlled silver blue. Elias noticed something others didn't. She looked tired. Stress crossed species lines. You could see it in posture, in stillness, in the way her attention drifted for half a second too long. Elias had learned that humans survived by reading rooms better than anyone else. Not because they were smarter, but because they had to be. He scanned the crowd slowly. That's when he saw the server. The alien carrying the drink tray moved too smoothly. Not graceful. Precise. Every step measured. No hesitation. No social awareness. The tray held decorative food grown to look harmless, soft, forgettable. Perfect camouflage. Elias felt it before he saw it. A pressure in the air. A spike of intent. Humans called it instinct. Aliens dismissed it as superstition. The server reached for his lapel. The air shimmered. Nanits. A weapon swarm, silent, invisible, programmed to dissolve organic matter down to molecular dust. No alarms. No warning. By the time security reacted, Queen Celarin would be gone. Elias did not shout. He did not think. He moved. He crossed the distance in 2 long strides, grabbed the alien queen, 7 feet of crystal-plated power, and slammed into her with everything he had. They hit the floor as the space she had occupied turned into grey mist. The nanits screamed. Not audibly. Electronically. The sound crawled across Elias's bones as he twisted his body over hers, shielding her with flesh instead of force fields. Pain came instantly. Something tore across his side. Hot. Sharp. Final. He dragged them behind a marble hydration column just as alarms finally exploded into existence. Energy shields snapped into place. Guards fired at nothing. Too late. The swarm struck the barrier instead, chewing uselessly at stone. Queen Celarin did not scream. She calculated. Her multiple eyes focused on Elias, not with fear, but with assessment. His heart pounded wildly beneath his uniform. Hers beat slow and controlled, even now. "You are vibrating," she said calmly. "Yeah," Elias muttered, forcing himself upright. "That happens when humans don't want to die." He kicked open a maintenance hatch and shoved them both inside. The door sealed with a hiss, cutting off chaos and light. Darkness swallowed them. The space was barely large enough for cleaning drones. Metal walls. Cold air. The silence was heavy. Elias finally felt the blood. It soaked into his uniform, warm and sticky. He pressed a hand to his side, hoping pressure would be enough. Humans were good at hoping. "You are injured," the Queen stated. "Later," he replied. "Nanits track movement and heat. If we stay still, they'll lose us." She watched him closely. Her armor shifted color, not silver now, but pale violet. Confusion. Curiosity. "You chose inefficient action," she said. "You absorbed damage meant for me." He gave a weak smile. "Yeah. Humans do that." She looked at the blood pooling beneath him. "You will die," she said, not cruelly. "Factually. Possibly," Elias replied. "But you won't." Something changed then. Across the galaxy, alien civilizations believed survival came from superiority. Stronger bodies, better technology, smarter logic. They never understood sacrifice. Queen Narration reached out slowly and touched Elias's torn jacket. The fabric was heavy, reinforced with human composite weave. Not meant for her kind. She removed it. Elias blinked weakly. "Hey, that's regulation issue." She ignored him. She wrapped the jacket around her own torso, pressing it against the crack forming in her armor where the nanites had grazed her earlier. The human fabric absorbed energy strangely, resisting, insulating, confusing the swarm's residual sensors. Outside, the nanites drifted past the hatch and moved on. Silence returned. "You shielded me," she said softly. "So I will shield myself, with what shielded you." Elias laughed, then coughed. Blood stained the floor. "Guess my jacket finally found a purpose." The Queen rose, wearing the blood-soaked human uniform like a banner. In that moment, something ancient and dangerous shifted in her mind. Humans were not weak. They were terrifying. And for the first time in galactic history, an alien queen would owe her life to one. The hatch stayed sealed for a long moment. Outside, the Nexus screamed with alarms, footsteps, and shouted orders in a dozen languages. Inside, there was only metal cold and the sound of Elias Rowe breathing like he had to negotiate with his own lungs for every inhale. Queen Narration stood over him, wearing his jacket as if it was ceremonial armor. The fabric looked wrong on her, too small in places, stretched across crystal plates, stained dark where his blood had soaked through. But it did something no royal mantle had ever done. It made her look human. Not in shape. Not in face. In meaning. Elias tried to sit up again, failed, and slid back against the wall. He kept one hand pressed to the side of his ribs. The other searched blindly for his comm unit. "Don't," the Queen said. He paused, eyes half-lidded. "Don't what?" "Do not waste strength." Her voice stayed calm, but her armor was no longer violet. It drifted toward deep blue, focus, decision. "You will require treatment. Immediately." "Yeah," Elias whispered. "That's the plan." He tapped his comm anyway. No signal. The Nexus maintenance corridors were designed to block most transmissions. Privacy for the elite. A perfect place to murder someone quietly. Elias forced a breath. "If they think you're dead, they'll start fighting over your seat before your body cools." The Queen's eyes narrowed. "They already are." He didn't understand until she tilted her head, listening. Through the metal, faint vibrations carried. Not just alarms. The sound of weapons firing. A heavy, rhythmic thump, like security cannons. Someone had turned the assassination attempt into a riot. Elias swallowed. That escalated fast. "It was intended to," she replied. "The Nexus is a neutral ground. A successful strike here proves no leader is safe. It fractures alliances." Her gaze dropped to his bleeding side again. "They used you as distraction." He tried to grin. "Joke's on them. Humans are very distracting." She stared at him for a second, then said something unexpected. "You are not a servant." Elias blinked. "I mean, technically I'm a commander." "No," she said, firm. "You are not lesser." He almost laughed, but the pain made him wince. "Tell the rest of the galaxy that." "That is the problem," she said. "They will not listen. Not unless they fear the truth." Elias's eyelids fluttered. He was losing heat. Losing clarity. His body did what bodies always did. It tried to shut down quietly. Humans were stubborn, but biology had limits. The Queen noticed. She crouched beside him, and the corridor suddenly felt smaller. Her presence was massive, like a mountain deciding to kneel. "You saved me," she said. "Now you will live." Elias exhaled. Appreciate the confidence. It is not confidence. It is obligation. Ah. He swallowed again. So this is the famous alien honor code. Her eyes hardened. You do not understand. A debt to an Aurelian queen is not a favor. It is a chain. Elias's lips cracked into a tired smile. I've had worse chains. Outside, the sound of weapons grew closer. The Nanits hadn't found them, but something else might. The Queen's head lifted. They are sweeping the maintenance levels. Security? Elias asked. She didn't answer immediately. That was the answer. Not your security, he muttered. No, she said. And if they find us, they will kill you first. In front of me. To prove I am powerless. Elias forced himself up onto one elbow. Then we need a way out. We do, she agreed. But not through the main corridors. They will be sealed. Maintenance map? Elias asked. She touched the wall with 2 fingers. A faint glow pulsed under the metal, as if the corridor itself recognized her authority. Holographic lines appeared in the air, forming a simple map. Elias stared. Okay. That's useful. The Nexus obeys royal access, she said. Even in chaos. So you can open doors, Elias said. But can you open a medical station? She looked down at him. I can open everything. That should have been reassuring. Instead, it made Elias uneasy. Because if she could open everything, then everything could be used against her. He pointed weakly at a junction on the map. This looks like a waste chute. It is, she said. Does it lead outside? It leads to refuse processing. Elias nodded slowly. Perfect. The Queen stared at him, as if he had just suggested walking into a volcano. You want to hide inside refuse. Not hide, Elias corrected. Travel. Humans have survived worse smells than alien trash. It's kind of our brand. Her eyes shifted violet again. Confusion. He coughed. Look, every civilization has blind spots. You guys don't think in gross solutions. You think in elegant solutions. So if we do something disgusting, no one expects it. The Queen looked at the map again, silent. Then she nodded once. Human logic is deeply unsettling. Thanks, Elias whispered. That's the nicest thing anyone's said about my species. She opened a panel at the floor with a gesture. A warm, sour air rose up from below. Elias felt his stomach twist. Even through pain, he could recognize the smell of processed waste, chemical, sharp, metallic. He gagged slightly. The Queen watched him. Your body rejects the path. My dignity rejects it, Elias corrected. My body will follow orders. She reached down, and before Elias could protest, she lifted him. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't brutal. It was simply strong, like gravity being turned off. Elias's feet left the ground. His blood-slicked uniform stuck to her jacket in places. He tried to speak, but the movement tore his wound open again. His vision flashed white. The Queen adjusted her grip and held him tighter, more carefully. The human jacket creaked as it stretched, carrying both their weight in a strange hybrid embrace, alien crystal and human cloth, stitched together by necessity. You are lighter than your arrogance, she said. Elias coughed out a laugh. I work hard on that arrogance. She lowered him toward the chute. Below, darkness and heat rolled upward. Elias looked at her face. So, when we get out, what happens? What happens, she said, is that they learn the cost of touching what is mine. Elias felt a chill that had nothing to do with blood loss. He realized something in that moment. The assassin's plan had failed. But it had also succeeded in another way. It had united a queen and a human in the worst possible way for the galaxy. Aurelian politics were built on dominance. Humans were built on improvisation. Together, they could break rules no one even knew existed. The Queen lowered him into the chute. The heat wrapped around them, thick and foul. Elias fought the urge to vomit. The Queen's armor shimmered in disgust, but she did not hesitate. She stepped in after him. The hatch sealed above, cutting off sound. For a moment, there was only the slow, wet hum of machinery and the faint vibration of waste processing conveyors. Elias breathed shallowly, trying not to inhale too much. The Queen stood in the filth like it was a battlefield. Then, in the dim red emergency light, she looked down at him and spoke quietly. "You asked what happens next." Elias nodded weakly. She leaned closer, and the alien Queen, who commanded fleets and crushed rebellions, said something that made Elias forget the smell, forget the pain, forget everything. "You will be seen." Elias blinked. "What?" She touched the human jacket on her chest, where his blood still stained it. "This," she said, "is not clothing. It is proof." Elias tried to understand. Proof of what? Her voice sharpened like a blade being drawn. Proof that a human bled for a queen, and the queen did not let him die. The conveyor beneath them jolted. The chute began moving. Elias gritted his teeth as his body shifted painfully, but he held on. They were leaving the Nexus. Not through power. Not through protocol. Through the one place no elite mind would ever willingly go. Trash. Humanity's favorite path to survival. And behind them, above them, in the glittering halls of the Nexus, the assassins were already celebrating. Because they believed the Queen was gone. They believed the human was irrelevant. They believed the story was finished. They had no idea. They had just created a legend. The refuse conduit spat them out beneath the Ethelgard Nexus like an afterthought. Steam hissed. Vents groaned. Massive processors chewed through waste with mechanical indifference, grinding alien excess into recycled matter. The galaxy's power ended here, beneath polished marble and glowing banners. Queen Selarin stepped out first. The human jacket still hung from her shoulders, stiff with drying blood. It had stopped being just fabric. It marked her. Anyone who saw her now would know something had changed. Elias collapsed onto the grated floor the moment she set him down. Pain hit him like gravity returning all at once. His vision blurred. He tasted copper. His body finally admitted what his mind had refused to accept. He was in trouble. The Queen knelt beside him immediately. Her armor flashed pale red. Alarm. "You are failing," she said. "Yeah," Elias whispered. "Humans do that, right before we surprise people." She placed 2 long fingers near his wound, careful not to touch. Her eyes focused, scanning, calculating. "Your blood loss exceeds safe limits. My physiology cannot replace yours." "Didn't expect you to," Elias said weakly. "But I do have an idea." She looked at him sharply. "You are in no condition to form ideas. That's when humans do our best work." He forced his shaking hand to his chest and pulled out a small, flat object no bigger than a coin. It blinked faintly. The Queen's eyes widened slightly. "What is that?" "Emergency Terran Field Kit," Elias said. "Not standard issue. Earth doesn't trust anyone to rescue us." He pressed the device to his skin. It unfolded instantly, thin metallic petals spreading, sealing over the wound with a sharp sting. The pain spiked, then dulled. The bleeding slowed, replaced by a deep ache. Elias exhaled shakily. Not a fix. Just a pause. The Queen watched in silence. "You carry medical technology concealed on your person," she said. "Without authorization." "Humans don't like dying politely," Elias replied. She stood slowly. Above them, the Nexus trembled. The fighting hadn't stopped. It had spread. Security drones flew overhead in tight formations. Energy signatures pulsed through the superstructure. Someone was purging entire sections. "They will seal this level soon," the Queen said. "When they do, everything below becomes irrelevant." Elias nodded. "Then we don't stay." She looked at him. "You cannot outrun trained hunters." "True," Elias said. "But we don't have to." She frowned slightly. He gestured weakly toward the massive processing machinery around them. You know what humans are best at. Conflict, she said. No, Elias corrected. Using things wrong. The Queen stared at the machines again. Conveyors. Crushers. Vents. Power feeds. Systems never meant to host living beings. Elias continued, his voice low but steady. Your enemies will think in terms of security routes, exits, energy shields. They won't consider this place a battlefield. They won't map it for movement. You will move through waste systems, she said. We will move through infrastructure, Elias corrected. Big difference. She studied him for a long moment. Then her armor shifted, not red, not violet, but something deeper. Aurelian respect. Terran improvisation, she said slowly. This is why your species survives. Elias smiled faintly. You should see us build cars. They didn't hear the hunters at first. That was the terrifying part. Then the air changed. A pressure wave rippled through the lower levels. The faint hum of active cloaking fields vibrated against Elias's skull. His instincts screamed. Down, he whispered. The Queen moved instantly, lowering herself and shielding him with her body just as three shapes shimmered into view. Not Nexus security. These were professional. Tall, lean aliens wrapped in adaptive stealth armor. Their weapons were compact, silent, precise. Killers designed to erase targets without witnesses. One of them tilted its head. Royal biosignature detected, it said calmly. Target alive. Elias felt the Queen tense above him. She could fight. She could kill all three. But if she did, more would come. And he would die in the crossfire. Elias raised one trembling hand. Your cloak bends light, he whispered. But it doesn't bend stupidity. Before the hunters could react, Elias slammed his palm onto a control panel embedded in the floor. The machines screamed. Conveyors reversed direction. Crushers jammed. Vent pressure spiked violently. Waste erupted upward in a violent surge. The cloaked hunters lost footing instantly. One slammed into a grinder and vanished in a burst of sparks and steam. Another fired blindly as its stealth flickered, shots carving useless holes into metal. The third leapt backward, straight into an open refuse chute. Silence followed. The Queen stared at Elias, stunned. He sagged back against the floor, breathing hard. Infrastructure, he murmured. Kills faster than weapons. She helped him up again, her grip firm. They will adapt, she said. Of course, Elias replied. That's why we don't stop. They moved deeper into the underlevels, following maintenance routes that twisted like veins through the Nexus's foundation. The Queen opened sealed doors with gestures. Elias sabotaged systems behind them with small, ugly tricks, overloads, jams, reversals. Nothing elegant. Nothing predictable. Above them, the hunters grew frustrated. And that frustration spread upward. Because reports reached the upper chambers. Reports that made no sense. Targets using waste routes. Infrastructure failures following human presence. Elite hunters disappearing without energy signatures. And always one strange detail repeated in every scan. The alien Queen. Wearing a blood-stained human jacket. The image spread. Whispered through data channels. Mocked at first. Then questioned. Then feared. Because symbols mattered. And this symbol told a story no empire wanted told. That a queen had been saved by a human. That she had taken his clothing like armor. That she had chosen his methods over her own. Elias stumbled as they reached an emergency transit pod, a small craft meant for maintenance crews. The Queen caught him again. You are still standing, she observed. Humans are bad at quitting, Elias said. It annoys everyone. She placed him into the pod gently and sealed the door. The engines hummed to life. As the pod launched into the dark service tunnels beneath the station, Elias looked up at her through blurred vision. Hey, he said softly. She leaned closer. When this is over, he whispered, they're not going to forget this. She nodded once. That is the intention. The pod shot away from the Nexus, carrying them into the void between stars. Behind them, the Ithalgard Nexus burned with confusion, fear, and the first whispers of a new truth. Humans were not weak. They were variables. And the galaxy had never learned how to solve for them. The maintenance pod drifted in silence. Stars slid past the narrow viewport like distant sparks, cold and indifferent. Inside, the air smelled of metal, antiseptic foam, and dried blood. Elias lay strapped into the emergency harness, eyes half closed, chest rising unevenly. Queen Celerin stood beside him, one clawed hand braced against the wall as the pod accelerated away from the Ithalgard Nexus. For the first time in centuries, she was alone with her thoughts. And they unsettled her. Her internal channels flooded with data. Reports leaked faster than officials could suppress them. Security footage. Sensor logs. Conflicting testimonies. 100 versions of the same impossible event. The assassination attempt. The failure. The human. And always, the image. An Aurelian queen wearing a blood-stained human jacket. Across the galaxy, analysts froze mid-calculation. Strategists rewound footage frame by frame. Cultural experts argued over symbols older than empires. Because in Aurelian tradition, wearing another's garment in battle meant one thing. Debt accepted. Protection claimed. Fate intertwined. It was a declaration no one had heard spoken in 10,000 years. Inside the pod, Elias stirred. Still alive, he murmured. Yes, the Queen replied. You persist. Good, he said faintly. That would have been awkward. She studied him. His species healed fast, for soft creatures, at least, but he was still fragile. Still breakable. And yet, he had shifted galactic momentum more effectively than entire fleets. You do not understand what you have done, she said. Elias cracked one eye open. I tackled someone and bled on the floor. Humans do that a lot. No, she said. You forced the galaxy to look at you. He frowned slightly. That bad. That dangerous, she corrected. The pod shuddered as it entered a shadowed docking bay far from the Nexus. Automated clamps locked on. Medical drones began to move. Before they could reach Elias, the Queen raised a hand. No, she said. The drones paused, awaiting override. I will carry him, she continued. There was no debate. The machines powered down. She lifted Elias again, carefully this time, and stepped onto the deck of a small Aurelian escort vessel. Its crew froze at the sight of her. Their queen. Wounded. Wearing alien clothing. Holding a human like something precious. No one spoke. That silence spread faster than any command. As medics rushed forward, Celerin addressed them without looking away from Elias. He is under my protection, she said. Harm him, delay him, or question his presence, and you answer to me. The medics bowed and moved with a new urgency. Elias was carried into a medical chamber designed for crystalline physiology. Alarms immediately protested his biology. Human incompatibility detected, the system warned. The Queen ignored it. Adapt, she ordered. The system hesitated, then complied. That moment, small, unseen, was another fracture in the galaxy's old assumptions. Elsewhere, the reaction was not quiet. The footage leaked fully. Not censored. Not framed. Raw. A human diving through nanite mist. A queen pulled down behind cover. Blood on marble. A jacket removed. Worn. The reactions varied by species. Some laughed. Some panicked. Some recalculated. Military councils convened emergency sessions. Analysts ran probability trees that kept collapsing into chaos. Human behavior refused to stay inside predictive models. They didn't fight to dominate. They didn't fight to conquer. They fought to protect, even when it made no sense. That made them terrifying. On Earth, the response was slower, but deeper. Elias Rowe's name surfaced quietly at first. A few internal channels. A few intelligence briefings. Then the video reached the public. Humans watched in stunned silence. They saw one of their own, small, breakable, bleeding, throw himself in front of something far bigger. And for once, the galaxy noticed. Recruitment centers overflowed. Diplomats stopped apologizing. Scientists smiled the way they did before breakthroughs. Because humanity had always been underestimated. Now, it had been witnessed. Back on the escort vessel, Elias woke to soft light and unfamiliar stars. Pain still lived in him, but it was distant now. Managed. He turned his head slowly. The Queen sat beside him, still wearing the jacket. "You didn't give it back," he said hoarsely. "It is not yours anymore," she replied. He raised an eyebrow. "You steal all your allies' clothes." "No," she said. "Only the ones who save my life." He chuckled weakly, then winced. "So what happens now?" The Queen stood. She looked at him, not as a curiosity, not as a tool, but as an equal. "Now," she said, "I tell the galaxy the truth." "Which is?" "That humans are not a minor species." Elias's smile faded. "That's going to cause problems." "Yes," she said. "For those who made you bleed." She turned toward the viewport, where stars burned silently. "They wanted my death to fracture power," she continued. "Instead, they forged something worse." Elias followed her gaze. "What's that?" She spoke slowly. "A bond between unpredictability and authority." She faced him again. "A queen who owes a human." Elias exhaled. "That sounds like a very bad idea." Her eyes glowed softly. "For them," she agreed. Outside the ship, messages flooded in. Summons. Demands. Threats. The galaxy was awake now. And it was afraid. Because humanity had done what no species ever had. It didn't conquer. It didn't submit. It stepped forward, and changed the story. The galaxy did not wait long to respond. Ultimatums never do. Within 48 standard cycles, every major power block issued a statement. Some were wrapped in polite language. Others were direct enough to be considered threats. They all carried the same message. Return the human. Explain the symbol. Restore the balance. Queen Iselarin stood before the grand convocation alone. No guards. No fleet behind her. No advisors whispering caution. She still wore the jacket. It had been cleaned, repaired, reinforced, but the faint dark stain over the chest remained. She had ordered it preserved. Across the convocation chamber, representatives of dozens of civilizations watched in tense silence. Beings of light, machine minds, scaled warlords, intellect collectives older than planets. They had ruled the galaxy by rules. Humans did not follow rules. And that terrified them. A voice echoed from the central dais. "Explain yourself, Queen Iselarin." She did not bow. "I owe an explanation to no one," she replied calmly. "But I will speak." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. She raised one clawed hand. "This jacket," she said, touching the human fabric, "was worn by a member of a species you labeled minor. Insignificant. Replaceable." The murmurs grew louder. "He bled for me," she continued. "Without command. Without promise of reward. He acted before calculation. Before fear." She let her gaze sweep the chamber. "He saved my life." A representative of the Kel Dominion rose sharply. "Sentiment does not rewrite galactic order." "No," the Queen agreed. "Reality does." She activated the chamber display. Footage played. Not just the attack. The escape. The infrastructure sabotage. The hunters erased by waste systems and reverse conveyors. Human improvisation in its rawest form. "You built empires on superiority," Iselarin said. "Strength. Logic. Control." She paused. "Humans build survival on adaptability." The chamber went silent. "They do not ask permission to exist," she continued. They do not wait for perfect odds. They turn what is ignored into weapons. What is broken into tools. She lowered her hand. And when one of them chooses to protect, they do so completely. A machine intelligence spoke next, voice cold and precise. Such unpredictability is a threat. Yes, the Queen said. That is why you will respect it. Another voice snapped back. You would elevate them? Because of one incident. S.A.E. Larin's armor darkened. One human, she said slowly, stood between death and a queen. Her eyes burned across the chamber. How many of you would have done the same? No one answered. Because the answer was none. The chamber doors opened then. Gasps followed. Elias Rowe walked in. Not in uniform. Not in armor. Just human. Bandaged. Scarred. Standing straight anyway. The galaxy saw him clearly for the first time. Small. Fragile. Unapologetic. I didn't come to make a speech, Elias said, voice steady. I just wanted to be clear. Every sensor locked onto him. Every probability engine spun. When things went bad, he continued, I didn't think about species rankings or political consequences. He looked around the chamber. I thought about someone being in danger. Silence pressed in. We don't save people because they're powerful, Elias said. We save them because we can. He met S.A.E. Larin's gaze briefly. She inclined her head, a queen acknowledging an equal. Elias turned back to the assembly. If that scares you, he said, you should probably be scared. No threat. No boast. Just truth. The convocation recessed in chaos. Votes fractured. Alliances stalled. Models failed. And in that confusion, something unprecedented happened. The Queen made her final declaration. Humanity, S.A. Larin announced, is hereby recognized as a sovereign adaptive power. A shockwave tore through galactic politics. Any act against them, she continued, will be considered an act against me. She paused. And I do not forget debts. That was enough. Not because of fleets. Not because of weapons. Because the galaxy understood something at last. Humans were not conquerors. They were catalysts. Weeks later, on a quiet balcony overlooking a shared star system, Elias leaned against the railing, watching unfamiliar constellations. Larin stood beside him. You could have stayed silent, he said. Let them decide. She shook her head. That would have been inefficient. He smiled. Guess we're rubbing off on each other. She reached up and removed the jacket. For a moment, Elias thought she was finally giving it back. Instead, she folded it carefully and handed it to him. It belongs to your people now, she said. He took it, surprised. You sure? She nodded. It is no longer armor, she said. It is a reminder. Of what? That sometimes, the Queen said softly, the smallest species changes everything. Elias looked at the jacket. At the faint stain. At the stitches holding it together. Human. Imperfect. Unbreakable. Far away, across the galaxy, a new term entered strategic doctrine. Not a weapon. Not a species. A warning. Terran improvisation. And whenever alien commanders saw a human step forward without hesitation, they remembered the story. The Queen. The blood. And the jacket that proved humanity did not need permission to matter. The end.